Right, good morning from Montreal. Good afternoon in Norwich. Willie Cruickshank joins us. World Championship Air Race. Thanks for joining us, Willie.
Hi, Regan. Good to see you.
Willie, this is the news we've all been waiting for in air sports. What a year we've had. What a 12 months. Everything being cancelled, a few things going on, but the final official announcement that this is going to go ahead in 2022. Can I just say thank you?
Well, yeah, thanks for your enthusiasm. It is great, and it's been quite a journey to even get to this point. And you know, we've still got a year to go to the first race. Yeah. But yeah, very exciting and great for everybody.
Are you doing any flying at the moment, Willie? Is it still locked down completely in the UK?
I'm in my kitchen, Regan. This is about as far as I get to go these days.
Yeah, I know exactly. My kitchen's right next door. I'm in the dining room here. So, Willie, let's go back a little bit. Let's talk about how you started. You did your first license when you were 14?
First glider license when I was 14. I was in the Air Cadets at school. Did that. And then I got one of what at the time was a flying scholarship with the Royal Air Force. So at 17, they paid for me to get my private pilot's license, which was fantastic. Yeah. And then I joined the Air Force straight from school, but I took a slightly roundabout route to becoming a pilot. I spent my first tour as a navigator, flying on Buccaneers doing strike attack.
Incredible. How did you get the scholarship? How did that come about?
It was again just applied through the cadets at the time.
Yeah.
And there were two types of scholarships. You could go for a scholarship that meant that they paid for your final year at school, and you had a guaranteed place at Cranwell to start training, yeah. Or you got a flying scholarship which took you through getting your private pilot's license, but you then had to compete again to get into RAF Cranwell for the start of training. And I went through the second route of doing the scholarship and then applying to get into the Air Force proper.
And so you were flying before you passed your driving license, I believe.
I did, yeah. That was scary for my parents, I think, but I was very fortunate. My grandma was my greatest supporter, and she came and did lots of flying with me in those early days.
Incredible. What year was this in, Willie? When we're talking?
That was about 1984, something like that, yeah.
And then, so after the Buccaneer, what happened next?
Buccaneer, I was a navigator on a frontline Buccaneer squadron.
Yeah.
Persistently applying for a branch change to be a pilot. And eventually there was a giving in moment, and I did an assessment flying the Hunter around Lossiemouth in Scotland, and they said, "Yeah, we think you're good enough to go into pilot training." So I went through the whole pilot training on the Jet Provost and the Hawk, and then from the Hawk went on to the Jaguar.
The Jaguar, what a machine!
Loved it back in the heyday. When I joined the Jaguar force just as it was coming back from the first Gulf War, where it had an amazing time, and I joined the Jaguar then, and within a couple of years, we were spending most of our time down in the Balkans doing Operation Knife Flight over Bosnia, and then mixing that up, and then back into northern Iraq for Op Warden, and all that entailed. So it was a pretty busy time, actually. We spent a lot of time away, but a great aeroplane. I mean, way out of its league these days. It wouldn't keep up with the modern technology, but at the time it was a very good aeroplane to be on, and great fun to be on a Jaguar squadron back in the 90s and 2000s.
Incredible stuff, incredible. How many years were you in the RAF then, Willie?
About 30 years.
Right.
Yeah.
And then
I spent a lot of time. I mean, it was basically Jaguar and ground tour. You know, you sort of flick between tour on the squadron, tour in an office somewhere, back to a squadron as a flight commander, back on an office somewhere, and then I was very fortunate. I spent my last flying tour as the squadron boss, commanding 6 Squadron, and that was just the best job anybody could ever have. Absolutely.
So what year did you leave? I'm trying to get the time.
About 2010, yeah.
And did you go straight into Wildcat then? Was that straight into the team?
Yeah, so I was, when you leave the Air Force after you've done the full 30 odd years, you're actually able to draw a pension pretty much straight away. And there's one of the rules is that you don't have to take it all as pension. You can take some of it as a lump sum up front if you want to.
Right.
So I did that, and then to my wife's shock and horror, spent it all on a Pitts S2B. So I'd longed to fly a Pitts. I'd flown Pitts S1 somebody else owned it, but I flew that. I'd had a share in a Yak 52. I'd flown Chipmunk and Tiger Moth and that kind of stuff. But a Pitts S2B was going to be amazing. So I met a local guy not far from here, a guy called KUTZ, who was a famous Pitts builder over here and pilot, and we partnered together and we formed Wildcat, and we spent pretty much 9-10 seasons flying as a pair of Pitts specials, and had an absolute whale of a time doing that. It was great fun.
That's a long time, 10 years, 10 seasons. That's a lot, isn't it? It's a big part of your life.
It was. Actually, you know what? It was a massive part of my life. It was, you know, when I stopped doing Wildcat just before the lockdown started over here, you realise that that's what you'd spent pretty much every weekend on. In the summertime and springtime, you're there every weekend flying. And in the wintertime, you're there every weekend working on it, recovering it, you know, fixing bits that are broken. So Wildcat was a massive chunk of my life, and a great 10 years.
While you were part of that, and when you were out there doing a thing, then meeting the people and meeting the kids and the families, how did that feel to you?
Amazing. I mean, the support from people loving aviation has not dwindled since I remember going to air shows, you know, as a 10-year-old, you know, years ago with my folks. It's aviation just enthuses people, you know, and no matter what it is, whether it's people standing at the end of the runway here at Norwich, you see the cars parked there just watching, I don't know, a 737 going in and out. People love to watch airplanes, and at the air shows it was the same. And we were very, we made it a major point of being people that went and engaged with the crowd, spoke to them, signed autographs, gave away stickers. You know, for us it was the whole involvement in being at an air show. Al was the same as me. He grew up in Scotland, where I came from, and he remembered going to the same sort of air shows I went to, and being sort of a great fan of aviation from youth days. So we both did the same sort of stuff, and we loved going and sharing that experience. We did, having the benefit of a second seat in our pits, we spent a lot of time taking people for just experience flights to say, come and have a go. And lots of them went on to then learn to fly themselves. It was really good.
I remember as a kid being at displays and air shows and seeing the displays in front of my face and how incredibly awe-inspiring it was. But then meeting, the first time I met a pilot at a display, I was mind blown that it was a human just like me, just the same as me. I couldn't believe it, because I thought there was like some supernatural being, you know. It's incredible.
That air race pilots are supernatural beings. But that's
Well, let's talk about air race. I mean, the Red Bull air race, all those years, all around the world, so many venues, so many hours of television and experience for so many thousands of people, and then it all ended. Let's talk about where you were then, and how you got involved further along with it, Willie.
So I wasn't involved with the air race when it finally came to an end. I'd left before that, and I think it was sad, but not completely unexpected. I think there was a kind of just an undercurrent all the time of, I think because of the break earlier on in between seasons 1 and 2 of the Red Bull air race, so iterations 1 and 2, there was always that underlying current of how long has this got to go before Red Bull decide that it's not for them anymore. So it was a shock that it came and then ended so shortly after the announcement. It wasn't kind of we've only got a couple of seasons to go. It was literally in 2 months' time, 3 months' time, that's going to be it. So interestingly, I got a call pretty much the day of the announcement from some people out in Hong Kong that said, we've been working on the air race through other aspects. It's an amazing spectacle. It's an amazing event. It can't be allowed to just disappear. We want to put it back together, and we've been told you're the guy that we should talk to about this. So that started, and that's probably nearly 18 months ago now, and we've been on the journey ever since then to get us to this point. Were you expecting a call? Was it a complete surprise? Yeah, of course it was a complete surprise. These other people, it was a contact of a contact kind of stuff that said, hey, give Willie a call. And then, within an hour, I was on the phone to key people saying, there's an opportunity here, we might be able to bring this back. And that's one of the great advantages here. We can tap into the the huge wealth of experience and knowledge that the Red Bull Air Race built around this event. And the people that are coming to the new race series are bringing that with them. We are hugely grateful to Red Bull for everything they did. We've got a really good relationship with them in terms of how we are setting up the new air race. We are not the continuation of the Red Bull Air Race. We are the next iteration of the World Championship Air Race, supported with the FAI.
Yes.
We bought the racetrack equipment from Red Bull, so we've got all the right stuff. Pilots, I'm sure we'll get to talking about pilots shortly, but there's a lot of that. But in terms of the people that put the whole race together, whether it's event production or the aviation side of things, we can tap into all that experience, and there's some amazing people coming with us on this journey.
Yeah, you've moved quite fast, I believe. I feel like it's happened quite fast for you. It's just over a year, 18 months that you've got yourself in a situation quite far advanced with it already.
Interestingly, so prior to the whole COVID pandemic thing, it was kind of looking like we could almost just unpack everything and we're back up and running the way we were. Right. What's happened, and in hindsight, that would have been absolutely the wrong thing to do. Right. So what's happened is by building in this extra year plus of time, we've been able to sit down and go, now that we've got time before we start racing, how much of what was the Red Bull model do we want to use, and how much of it do we want to change, and how much of it do we want to completely fundamentally change?
Yes.
And I would say that the sort of the concept that we have now that we're launching next year is significantly different from the one we would have launched had we started flying over a year ago, which was the original plan.
Let's talk a little bit about the changes. You've got your Aero GP1, you've got your GT, with the team element as well. Let's talk a bit about that. What's changing there?
So we're bringing a team element into both areas. So Aero GP1 is our premier class. That's the top level. That's where the best pilots compete. And these are 12 independent race teams that we'll have in there. And we're moving towards a structure away from the Red Bull model, which was the pilot. I don't want to say this disparagingly about the other people involved, but the pilot is the team and everybody else is there to kind of support him. We're going to a model where the team is the important bit, and then there's a pilot that can come and go from the airplane. So we end up with a model more like a Formula One team, where you've got you end up with people supporting Mercedes F1 regardless of who the drivers are. Right. And you have people that support Daniel Ricciardo regardless of what team he's with.
Yes.
And we want to build that kind of structure where the team and the pilot are separable, they're interchangeable, they're not necessarily pulled together.
Yes.
And that then brings in much more of a competitive element, so that the teams can remain. But if the pilot's not competitive, just like the striker in a football team, he might be transferred out, and guess what? They're then in the market to transfer new blood in. Yes. So we'll start to see much more of a fluid transition of talent in the cockpit, rather than, unfortunately, the old Red Bull model, which just ended up with kind of people there for maybe a little bit too long, perhaps in some cases. Not that they were not deserving of their place, because they certainly were. But I think you just need to keep a little bit of change and dynamics in the lineup to keep people engaged and interested. And also, you've got to provide a route for the new blood to come in. Yes. Otherwise, they're not going to stay with the program, and they're going to leave.
What about the track itself? Sorry, go ahead, Willie.
Yeah, so that's the Aero GP1. That's the primary system. Now, below that, we have our feeder system, because we'll select people, give them a license to start racing, but we want to build them up in a slightly more sanitized, mentored environment before they go on to become a GP1 pilot. So we've set up a structure called the GT. Not unusually, it's based on a Le Mans type of race model, where you have a single race vehicle, yes, but multiple pilots jumping in and out of it on the same track. Yes. So that way we end up with a cumulative time for the team, rather than it just being single pilots. We think that again also brings in a bit of excitement and dynamics. You've now got 3 pilots all competing as a team. And that's going to be interesting, because clearly you've got egos at play there. You've got people performing well, people letting the team down, and how that will all play. And then running that, each of those teams will be a previous GP1 standard pilot that will mentor them, bring them on, make the team decisions, and that kind of stuff. And our Our GP1 class will be racing in Edge 540s and the MSX, and the GT class will be racing in Extra 300s.
Very nice indeed.
There, yeah.
The track itself and the rules during the race, any changes there? Still the same entry speed, wing level, degrees, G-force, all still the same? Or changes?
No, you can expect to see changes across the board in format and rules. Now, I'm not here to tell you what those are at the moment, because seriously, because they haven't been locked down. Part of our approach is working with our race teams really closely, and also we're working with the FAI, obviously, as our partner and a sanction provider for this. So it's important that we consult and engage as widely as we can to make sure that we've got what we want. It's important that TV production have a view on what the tracks and the format look like. So I would say that we're not throwing anything out just because it's our way of doing things. We'll start with the previous accepted way of doing things, but I think you can expect to see that evolve fairly quickly into subtle changes here and there in the way that the racing is conducted.
Well, like you say, it's a perfect opportunity. You've got the time to do that. Why not? For sure. And I was reading that you're looking at not just the race itself, but building a whole festival, carnival atmosphere around the day itself, and music venues, and lots of other things going on for the crowd that are going to be there.
Yeah, I mean, I think the air race, in my experience, becomes a real magnet for people coming. I mean, coming back to your comment about being, kids at air shows and thinking it's amazing. It brings people together, and they think this is a really exciting and fun thing to go and see. So why don't we maximize that opportunity and say, well, while we've got those people engaged, let's maybe explain a bit more about the future of green aviation and the expansion of urban air mobility. And a big point for me is if these sort of numbers we're seeing about the growth in urban air mobility come to fruition, when we're talking about hundreds of billions of dollars a year and tens of thousands of air vehicles coming out there, we're going to need a whole new group of aviation professionals to service that sector.
Yes.
And we need to start inspiring those people now. And we think that the air race provides a great vehicle for doing that. So we'll be working with local schools, which whenever we go to a race location, we'll have already got there weeks, months beforehand, engaged with schools, get them working on sort of STEM projects, aviation projects, and then bring them all to the race. We'll have a school day and say, hey, this is local schools come to the race for Friday. Talk to pilots, talk to technicians, find out what's going on, go to our tech zone, learn about what's happening, maybe get that moment that you said, when you go, wow, you're just like us, I could do this. And I want those people to go home after the race weekend going, I want to do that, I want to be like them, and actually be inspired to then go and do it. We're very fortunate that we've got Kirsty Murphy as one of our advisory board. Kirsty, obviously Tornado pilot, Red Arrows pilot, but now also an ambassador for UK government when it comes to engaging with youth and also diverse parts of population to say, how do we get you involved in this? So it's great to have Kirsty on board and other people we're talking to about how we can use this really exciting air race platform for the benefit of aviation. Absolutely. Much wider than just this sort of niche sporting element.
Yeah. I've been chasing Kirsty on Twitter to get an interview with her, so put a word in for me. Let's get her on here.
She's a very busy lady.
And then the eVTOL side of this as well, which we're going to be moving into as the years progress. Exciting stuff.
Yeah, so I think we've really put a lot of thought into the sort of aircraft we're going to be using in the race.
Yes.
Now, one of the things that's unique, I would say, about the air race model we're using, the Red Bull air race model that's now our race, is taking the air race into city centre locations. It's like racing on the river in the middle of Porto. It's like racing on the Danube, on the lake in Kazan, or even inside the Motor Speedway Stadium in Indianapolis or Texas. We actually get up close and personal with the spectators. And that's what makes it exciting. You get that visceral feel of the race going on in front of you. And to do that, we've got to go to the local aviation regulators, the CAA, the FAA, or the equivalent wherever we're racing, and get some pretty extreme waivers on the air navigation order to allow us to do this. And to do that, we have to build a very compelling safety case and risk mitigation model to show them that it's safe to do this. So let's start off with aeroplanes and pilots and racetrack structures that we know that were approved by these regulators for the last 16 seasons of Red Bull Air Race.
Right.
And let's get our foot back in the door and say, so you know this all works. You know that our systems are safe. You know that these aircraft have got a safety case going back decades with Lycoming engines and Zivco structures. So let's nail that down at the start. But while we're having this conversation, what's your appetite for us to come back next year or the year after with a modification or an evolution of airplanes? So if we were to come back with electrically powered edges in a couple of years, what would be your concerns? How do we mitigate that as we build up that journey? Rather than just arriving and saying, hey, we want to come racing. By the way, we've got a completely new airplane set up that you guys haven't seen before. And they'll go, no. I mean, it's like doing air display stuff, you know, the Wildcat stuff I did or the air race stuff. It's very easy for an aviation regulator to sit there with this request to do pretty extreme stuff and just say, no, that's just too risky. We're not going to allow it to happen. So we have to be very careful and cautious and work slowly and methodically and honestly and transparently with the regulator so that they know exactly what they're signing up to and we show them. At every race, there is the local aviation regulator sitting right next to, it was me in race control tower.
Right.
You know, making sure that everything is done exactly the way we said it would be done.
Yeah.
And with a big red button to say, stop, you can't do this anymore. So we just need to do that. So we are looking at electrification of the current fleet, and we're working with amazing people to look how we can make that happen. And we're also, with an eye to the future, we're looking at electric vertical takeoff and landing as part of this urban air mobility expanse that's coming on. There are some amazing options out there. We're talking to numerous partners that could be involved in this. Some of them are very exciting concepts that they have. And I think the big thing for me about that is that a year ago, some of those concepts were probably a decade away before we might have them on the track. I would say that within the last 12 months, that's accelerated and compressed down to being 3 or 4 years away from being on the track. In terms of technological capability, the next thing is, of course, you need to make sure that that is commercially viable. Right. And then the last but most important part of that jigsaw is, and the regulators will give us approval to use it, because we don't want to say, well, we've got a brand new race vehicle. Unfortunately, we can only race it in the middle of the desert, or we have to go into over seawater to do it. We want to be able to say, yeah, we can still come up to within a couple of 100 meters of the crowd, so they get to see what's going on and feel that racing experience.
Yeah, it's pretty amazing. It's rewarding as well that you've got one eye on that side of things. You're not dismissing it. We are prepared to move forward and see what the future brings there. It's a very much open and very exciting times. It really is, Willie.
Yeah, and of course we're. I think the way we look at it, this is we're not tied down to a single race platform.
Yes.
So if somebody comes and says we've developed this concept, would love to come and take part in the race series. Let's look at it. Let's evaluate it. Let's see what we do. We're not kind of a one race vehicle series. We will evolve as things progress, and we'll make sure that we use the race championship to its best ability to help showcase and develop future technologies in aviation and urban air mobility in particular.
Well, let's talk a little bit about the pilots. How many slots have you got available? Is it 21? Is it
21? So we got 21 slots and 28 applicants. All of who are so we have 20 applicants who are already air race license holders. So they're people that have raced or completed air race qualification and training camps. So that's a group over there. That's great. It's great that we've got that interest and they're coming on board, and we will put the 21 slots in. For me, the most encouraging thing is my inbox is inundated with really high caliber people saying, I want to come and get involved in the air race. How do I become an air race pilot? Yeah. And that for me is the next thing, because it's all about the future. We're not just saying we're bringing the air race back for 2022. We're bringing the air race back for the next 15, 20, 25, I don't know, forever years.
Yes.
And it's how do we build in that journey? So to see that there's such an appetite of really impressive young talent wanting to get involved in the air race is really great, as well as obviously having that nice rock solid starting position of 21 really high caliber pilots that can come straight in.
And what about test events? What's your plan so far for test events coming up?
Yeah, we're looking at, there's a couple of options we're looking at, but we'll certainly be doing live events in the middle of the summer. Obviously, UK lockdown will impact on that, but on the current plans, you know, I could throw out that July would be a great time for us to do a physical launch event. Yes. And then we'll be looking at test and evaluation towards the end of the year. Part of that is the pilots, just getting them back on the track and up to speed. And another part is the telemetry equipment. So, yes, you know, for us to have as a motorsport and be a credible motorsport, we need to have the very latest in data capture telemetry, as well as TV downlink. So we have a whole new setup being created from us from scratch that will feed us with aircraft data, pilot data, TV information, all being done into our control center, which we can then make sure that we've got the best sporting governance and also the best TV coverage, or video broadcast coverage, not just TV.
And what about venues? How far advanced are you with selecting venues at the moment?
So we are in our sort of long list at the moment. So we have 28, I think it was as of yesterday, 28 cities, literally all over the world, in asking for us to host races and in conversations. We're probably now in the phase where we're narrowing that down to the shortlist, and then the guys will go into final negotiations to see where we go. But it is a good mix. It starts. If I even say where, it would be too much to give away at the moment. Yeah. But it covers the whole world. And our first season, we're looking at 8, maybe 9 races, depending on how we get that logistics fit to work. But 8 or 9 races in season 1, and that's a mix of good old locations, as in places that have hosted races before, and a healthy smattering of places that have never had an air race before, and that's a good combination.
Well, exciting times. My palms are sweating just thinking about it right now, Willie. 2022, the return, or the brand new World Championship Air Race. We can't wait. Thank you very much, Willie Cruickshank, for joining us on Air Sports News. Really appreciate it.